Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Weighted Pod Created. I am Pierre Camus, the Roto Chef, and with me once again is Ariel Cohen. Joined us last week to talk about starting pitchers and the ATC projections, his ATC projections, and we're going to talk about hitters this time, overvalued, undervalued, compare current ADP to those projections. We got some news about opening day. Um, actually, I'll tell you, I'm a little disappointed. I thought that the idea of that proposal that the union was going to take it, they were going to push it back a month, which I'm not saying I want baseball to be delayed, but I actually thought it made sense. Where you push it back, 154 games, that's plenty. Universal DH, I really wanted the universal DH. This is going to impact what we're talking about with the hitters, right? Why isn't there a universal DH already? Why, like, who doesn't want that?
There's nobody who's looking out for the game. The commissioner, Rob Manfred, is, I guess, on the owner's side more. I guess he's their liaison more. There's nobody looking out for the game. I mean, everybody wants universal DH. The fans want it. Why not? And by the way, the first pitcher that gets hit or the first pitcher that gets injured on the bases, oh, you're going to have a major firestorm going on. Nobody's looking out for anybody. Do fans want to see baseball earlier? Do fans want to go to the games? Whatever question it is, it should be asked to the fans. I just feel like, look, the players have every right to get as much money as they want and do that, and the owners have as much right as they do to squeeze whatever they want if they think they can get it. It's a business. It's all business. I'm the fan, and I want to see what's good for the fan, and nobody's asking me. So I'm a little bit disappointed about both sides of baseball, and I know a lot of writers are pro the players, and some writers are pro the owners. I mean, I don't really take any sides. I evaluate it as this is business, and when are you going to help out the fans? So yeah, it'll be great. Look, I'm a National League guy, so I'm okay with the pitcher batting, but that's a different story.
Yeah, well, and I'm not, like you said, I'm not an American League, National League, or traditionalist versus modern. I'm not against change. I'll tell you that. Like I was in favor of changing the playoffs. Why not? Like no sport, no anything's supposed to just stay the same
True.
forever, right? The
Right, right, right.
Constitution of the United States wasn't meant to be exactly as it was in 1776 and then 1789. And
Right,
we
right,
have amendments, right? We have change. Change is necessary.
right.
So the whole
Yeah,
traditionalist
sure.
argument to me is bunk. But
Yeah, you know what? We had it last year, and I didn't dislike it, and it just gets a couple more people. Look, you're putting better people to bat. It's stars of the game, so why not? It makes sense. I totally get it. I'm fine if they have it. It helps the Mets, so it's pretty much whatever helps the Mets helps me. So
yeah, there you go. Well, we're going to talk about the Mets and one Met in particular, a guy actually I just took in one of my draft champions leagues. So we'll get to that in a second. But yeah, if the DH doesn't happen, then that's the few less jobs, less hitters. Nelson Cruz
yeah.
immediately signing with the Twins, which is a smart move. But yeah, that's
Doesn't
going to
that tell
affect
you that it's
things.
not going to happen? By the way, the fact that he signed, it's a signal that that's it.
Yep.
That's it. He heard no DH. That's it. Back with the Twins.
And Marcelo Ozuna reportedly shown interest with the Rays. That's not done, but that's the rumor. Yeah, things are starting to fall now, which I guess is kind of nice. But let me ask you this: so we talked about starting
Yeah.
pitchers last time, and comparing to the projections, who you think might be a little overvalued, undervalued. We'll do that with hitters. But the question remains with starting pitching, the elite starting pitching, right? There's so few guys that even have the chance of getting 200 innings. Do you feel like it's a smart strategy to try to grab one of those aces early, or do you feel like this might be the year? Like in football, a lot of people talk about zero RB, right? Zero running back. Everybody's drafting a running back, so
Yeah.
you kind of zig where they zag, and you just don't draft a running back till later, and you get value that way. Do you feel like that's a good strategy to just say, I'm gonna load up on offense. I'm gonna go with kind of value pitching later on. Um, do you feel like there has to be a kind of a preconceived strategy in the first place, or you just go for value,
Yeah.
wherever the picks fall?
I mean, I always go for value, and the question is, what is the value? There are three pitchers in my mind this year that are super elite, so far above everybody else. And of course, it's DeGrom, Cole, and Bieber. I mean, on an auction basis, on an NFBC 15 team type basis, we're talking those are $40 to $45 pitchers, and the next highest pitcher is going to be below $30 at Yu Darvish or so. There's a huge gap. When you have such elite pitchers with such a gap in value, it really makes you want to buy them. And I would advocate that in a 15-team league, other than possibly Tatis, Soto, Betts, and Acuna, you need to grab a starting pitcher. One of those three. I think that if you're picking seventh, you're going to be grabbing one of those three pitchers. Is really the way to do it because they're so unique and it brings some dimension there. I wrote an article a couple years ago called "The Case for an Ace" that basically shows that in terms of return on investment, the starting pitchers that are in the top tier, like the top 10, have been more stable at keeping their value. They've been great investments. So from that standpoint, they probably are better investments than some of the top hitters. So I would push for a pitcher taken early. It's not a must need, but I don't think you can come out of the first 3 or so rounds without a starting pitcher. It used to be back in the day, you can go 7 rounds without taking a pitcher. I think today's day and age, you need to take at least one. I know there's some people that are doing the pocket ace strategy where you come up with 2 out of the first 3 picks. That might be overkill. I think you're okay with grabbing one just to anchor yourself, and you can fill in somewhere else where you see value. But that's what I would think. Other than those 3 pitchers are must take, and I would push a lot of the other pitchers, especially the ones that you think are going to approach 200 innings, which is extremely unique in today's day and age.
Yeah, pocket aces, by the way. Our own Anthony Aniano goes by that moniker. I'm sure he's got his own strategy. But anyways, I mean, I get what you're saying because there are those guys that they're so head and shoulders above everybody else. If you have the chance to take a DeGrom or a Cole or even a Bieber, let me just play devil's advocate. What about with steals? Since we're focusing on hitters this time. Some would say, well, if you have a chance to get Trey Turner, who, could hit, and his power jumped up last year, short sample, but if you could go for 20, 25 home runs plus maybe even 50 steals, how do you weigh that against a guy like Garrett Cole?
Trey Turner is also one of these very unique commodities that need to be taken in the first round. He's a complete package, and with that steals, he can approach 30 steals, but he still has enough of the 5 category nature to make him first round worthy. The question is, what can you replace him with? I think that Trey Turner can be replaced on the shortstop market a little bit better, not very well. He's a first rounder, a little bit better than Cole can be replaced. I mean, the drop in value between Trey Turner and some of the other shortstops are not as great as the drop between Cole and even Yu Darvish. So because of that, those 3 elite starters are much more important to take than Turner. Turner's still a first rounder, but I do have a clear separation there.
All right, so fair enough. Let's talk about a guy who's kind of similar here. We're going to start comparing the ATC preseason projections to current ADP, and mainly when we refer to ADPs from the NFBC leagues, high stakes here. So what about Mondesi? We can't go without talking about Alberto Mondeci, probably the most polarizing player in the early rounds. Now, some people will say, look, he could lead the majors in steals, right? That's a commodity just in and of itself. That's worth taking at least in the first 2 rounds. His ADP right now is 23, which is not surprising. ATC has him as the 45th ranked player overall. I'm kind of surprised a little bit because, like you said, there is that drop off with pitching after those first few. And then, he's projected by ATC to steal 53 bases. And it's not like he's projected to totally tank your average, which is the fear, right? His fear is that he's going to, bat 200. He's projected to hit 253 and score 80 runs. So It feels to me like, given the drop off in steals there, that almost should be higher. How do you see that?
It's funny because you would think that with him at 53 steals, and the next highest person is like literally at 30 steals. It's such a huge advantage in steals. You would think that he would be ranked a lot higher. But you do the math, and you see his value in the other categories, and just from the math, and I'm not saying that he shouldn't be bumped up because of his uniqueness, but just from the Z-score math or the SGP or whatever you want to call it, he's not all that valuable. The runs are excellent. They're not elite, which a second-round player probably needs more. The RBIs are nothing special. I mean, you can have a guy in the 12th round have more. The batting average is, it's not 200, but it's 250. I mean, it knocked him out of leading off. Last year he was leading off, and then they said no, and they brought him down to the bottom of the lineup. Um, and certainly his power is nothing to sneeze of. He had one good year in 2018 of power, but you look at it, he was a little bit lucky with the home run to fly ball metrics and whatnot. I don't really buy his power. Maybe he can hit, somewhere in the middle of mid-teens, like 16 homers. That would be good. Maybe he can hit 20, possible, but nothing that's going to really help yourself. And if you're missing an offensive player in the second round and just have 15, 20 homers, you're deficient. You're starting from a deficiency. People are picking somebody with 30 to 40 homer power in the second round. How are you going to make that up? So it's just, you talk about his value, and it just doesn't make sense to draft him. And he is unique in that regard, but he doesn't fill enough of the other 5 categories to make him an anchor. He's also very risky. He's a risky play. Projections don't all agree. He has a very high interprojectional volatility. Projections don't agree. Some have him as being crappy. Some have him as being fantastic. And I can see that. I can see a path to him being first round. I can see a path to him being in a 30th round player. He also has some history of injury issues. So to me, there's enough risk and enough nothingness in 3 categories for me to say, I don't need him. Just remember that, sure, he can help your team in steals, but if you pass on him, it's not like it's not the end of the world. So one team gets him, so that team will do great in steals. You still are going to be competing on even footing with everybody else in the league. I wouldn't worry about passing him up. I'd rather take somebody who's going to, somebody who'll steal half as much, but will give you a better base in other categories and less risky.
Absolutely. And to me, what comes to mind, and a guy who I know a lot of people think is maybe a little overvalued, but like Luis Robert, steal half as many bases. He can still get you 20 plus steals. He could also hit twice as many home runs as Mondesi. He's projected to score a lot more runs. In fact, I believe in the top with 2025 runs. And, we've had this conversation before, going back to last year, said probably the most undervalued category is runs scored. And I know it's hard to predict, but still, in that lineup, he's going to score plenty of runs. And Mondesi, if he's in at the bottom of the Royals lineup, that's going to hurt. He might not even score 80 runs. So that's a big difference. And like you said, you're hoping for this one big boost in one category, but you're hurting yourself in 3 or 4 others. So that doesn't make sense.
Totally agree. Totally agree.
All right. Well, we're off to a good start then. All right, let's go to let's go to this one. I was going to go a different way. Let's talk about Gavin Bisho. Also kind of a power speed guy here. Also a player that a lot of people think is being a little overvalued. His ADP is 55 overall. ATC has him 83. So I think the fear here is very similar. Is the batting average going to hurt you? But also now with all the additions, George Springer, going to be hitting probably at the top of that lineup. That might push Biggio down. We don't know exactly where. I think he's projected to hit 6th maybe. But that might affect his runs scored. He's also a guy who's projected to score 80 plus runs. But again, and let me ask you this too, because these projections, have to come out early. How much adjusting is there for the fact that, they just signed a guy like Marcus Semien too, which kind of shuffles everything around here?
Yeah. So you'll see in the next cut of ATC, which is going to come out this weekend, you'll probably see a little bit of difference. Could be better and worse for certain categories. Maybe it'll be more RBIs, maybe it'll be less runs, depends. Yeah, Biggio, question is, where is he going to bat? George Springer usually is going to bat 1 or 2, I would imagine. Semien might bat 6th or 7th, and they might put Biggio at 2nd. I mean, Biggio has a fantastic OBP, so he really should be batting higher in the lineup. Makes a big difference. If Biggio, I know, is going to be batting 2nd, then he's much bigger value. If he's going to be batting 6th or 7th, not as much. I think that people are looking at his upside, and there are few people in this game today that have 25-25 ability, and he is one of them. And he's going to score a lot of runs because he gets on base quite a bit. For OBP leagues, I love him. He's fantastic. He also plays multiple positions. He's eligible even at a 10-game threshold at 2nd, 3rd, and the outfield, which is enormous these days. But he has a bad batting average. He can harm your batting average. I mean, he's going in the fourth round. He bats 242. ATC projects him at 242. His best batting average to date has been 250. Do you want a guy in the fourth round for 242? I mean, usually you're going to get these 242 guys like late, like 17th round, 18th round. You're already going to start with the 242 guy. You're putting yourself in a hole in batting average. Um, so the problem is, it's a question of being overvalued. He does have he's a 3.5 category guy, let's say, with the runs and maybe half RBI. Um, it's one of these guys that I just think that people are paying a little bit too much for the steals, a little bit too much for the power speed blend, and not paying attention to the math. I think people are buying him at his upside, which is if he reaches the 25-25 plateau. But, it's hard to project somebody for that, who's never done that level, right? He's never achieved that level. It's hard to project there. So there's some risk elements involved in Biggio. I do think he's a great guy. He's a great play discipline also. His WPDI numbers are off the charts. I wish he was a little bit better priced, but the market loves him. So it's a little bit out of my range for what I want to pay for him.
Yeah, and what you said exactly right. People love to pay for the ceiling or the perceived ceiling. We don't know that that's a ceiling. I
Yeah.
mean, he might not ever reach that, even if it's this year or
Yep.
not. But it's like it keeps coming back to the speed. Yeah. So with Biggio, I think the one thing that does make him a little more appealing, you mentioned too, is the fact that you can slot him at second or third base, and you're not going to see too many players unless you're going to wait around for a guy I kind of like, and I know is risky, but much later on is a guy like Gavin Lux, who has potentially that ceiling, but of course we haven't seen anything from him yet at the pro level. But that's taking a risk. All right, let's move on. The next pick here is going to be a guy I'm kind of surprised that there's such a big gap here. 68 spots between ATC's projections and current ADP, and that's Juan Moncada. All the White Sox again. So 85, 85 overall is where he's going, and he's projected at 151. Now, he's a guy that's interesting because, of course, the batting average sunk last year. He struggled basically all season. But how much are you going to excuse it because of the COVID? Because he got it early on, and he actually came out and said publicly, yeah, it affected me all season. He felt like he had, weakness. His timing was off, and of course, didn't have time to correct it. So I wonder if you're buying into that at all, or you really think that the outlier was really more the year before when you saw the batting average spike up near 300.
Well, I would say that projections really aren't going to consider that. But Freddie Freeman did have COVID last year. He was able
True.
to, and he had a bad case of it too. But I mean, who's to say? I mean, he was able to recover. Maybe Moncada didn't. I don't know if that's the reason, and we'll find out quickly next year. Then maybe Moncada is maybe not valued correctly. I'm going to play a little Sesame Street game. I'm going to tell you a couple of numbers, and you tell me which number doesn't belong. 211, 231, 235, 315, 225. Which one doesn't belong? It's the 315, right?
I think I get what you're saying. Yeah, one of these is not like the other.
Yeah. I mean, Yoan Moncada had 1 year where he had, by the way, he had a 406 BABIP, which is one of the highest single season BABIPs in the history of baseball. So he was one of the luckiest players that year, and he hit 315. I'm sorry, but I don't buy him as being a good batting average hitter. And I think the market is playing off of that 1 year and saying, whoa, this guy can hit it. I don't buy it at all. I agree with the projections on this one. Is he a 25 homer type player? Sure. Is he a 10 steals type player? Absolutely. Is he going to have like around 80 RBIs, 80 runs or so? Probably. So you take all that, and that's what ATC says, and you do the math, and he's not a 6th round player. He's probably a 10th round player. So I think it's just a value issue. I don't see any more upside than those numbers. I just can't project more than that kind of production for him. And his batting average, ATC has at 257. I think it's lower than that. I'm very pessimistic. Here's the other tricky thing here. The interprojectional standard deviation of $1.08. That's very low. That means that projections agree that these are his numbers. So we got projections agreeing. They're very confident. I think he's lower than this. I think he is a bust.
All right, here we go. Bring out the B word. We got a bust here. But you know what?
Yes.
That's exactly what the projections are for. Like I said, I mean, if there's a reason to
Yep.
say, you agree or not, this is a hard agree. Um, that makes me a little sad because I just took him in one of my leagues. But it wasn't in the sixth round. It was much later than it was, but it definitely wasn't 151 either. But anyways, we'll see how
Okay.
that pans out. All right, but now it's Met time, and you'll be happy to know I also did grab a share of Dominic Smith. He fell closer to his actual projection. And I get that we talked about with the DH, right? If the DH isn't happening, that could cut into his playing time. But I'm not too worried about that. I really don't see it happening because who else are they going to put in left field? Right now, I'm not sure that they have a replacement. But Dominic Smith going 107 ADP, and ATC has him projected 160. So I'm curious, what do you think it is that's dropping him down so far? Is it more of a playing time concern or just natural regression, maybe?
I think the issue is more regression than anything else. ATC has him projected for 481 at bats. It probably would be higher if he had a starting role, or if there was a DH. I think it's an instant boost up here. But I'm projecting him for 23 homers, a decent 267 average. Um, I think it's just regression. He's never shown this kind of level. He's shown skill in the past, and last year ATC was all over Dominic Smith. But this year, it's showing him. I don't know if he's showing him very overvalued, but it's definitely not a bargain by any means. I like him as a person. I think he's great. And I would say this though: if he is a high skilled player, I would bet the over on the at bats. Usually, you'll find ways to get good players at bats. And I know he can't play left field, but if he's mashing to start the season, I mean, that would be 2 years in a row. How can the Mets not sit him? At a certain point, you might want to play him over Pete Alonso, especially he's better defensively. You might want to play him in left field. You'll find reasons to get him in there. Now, the Mets didn't sign another outfielder yet, but I have to think the Mets are going to try. Whether it's Jackie Bradley or Kevin Pillar, even if it's just somebody on the bench who has some good fielding skills, they'll take some playing time away from him. But he should get the lion's share because he's a good player. So I'd probably bet the over on that. And because of that, I would probably put whatever ATC projection says and go higher. And your dog agrees with me. So that's the telltale sign when your dog agrees with my Dominic Smith analysis.
There you go. That's the seal of approval, the bark of approval. Yeah, interesting with Smith and Moncada. A lot of it, I think with ADP has to do with the whole prospect shine. These guys are very highly touted, throughout the minors, and then, well, they each have, flashed, of course. Smith last year when he finally got playing time, then Moncada the year before, also. So it's just a matter of will they repeat, right? Are we going to see more of the same, or are we seeing them go down? So that the safe thing to do is, I think, trust the projections.
Here's
Obviously.
the thing, though. It's about regression. So, yeah, you can always say, well, the guy did it last year. So either A, there's going to be regression, right? Or B, he's probably going to do something similar or maybe even more because there's a trend, right? You can go those two avenues. Which do you think historically wins out more? Is there more people who regress or is there more people who stay the same or get a little bit higher? Which one?
Regression always wins, right?
Yeah. So if you're going to bet on a couple of players, bet on regression because it usually wins out. Of course, you're going to be wrong, right? 7 out of 10 times you'll be right, and 3 out of 10. And of course, if you tell somebody, well, I bet in regression, see, I told you I was right about that player. Sure. But again, regression is a powerful force. Most of the time, you're going to be right if you pick the regression. So you might as well play the cards with the most of the time. I mean, that's what the Rays did, right? The Rays said, Blake Snell, we're only going to pitch 5 innings, not more. They made it to the World Series. Was it the right time that last time out? Maybe, maybe not. We don't know. But most of the time, they'll be right. And you play the numbers. The numbers usually will steer you in the right direction. Listen, I get paid because that's what I've found with numbers. So I'm gonna go with that.
Seems to be working pretty well for you too. So I'm gonna trust you on this. It's the reason
Why
I have
not?
you here. All right. Now, of course, people who hear regression, you always think negative, but there's such a thing as positive regression too. Let's get to that. And we did talk, if you remember last season, which wasn't all that long ago, Jd Martinez. He's a guy that we had a discussion about. Is he going to be a screaming value, a strong bounce back candidate? Well, so far, ATC says yes, of course. I can't imagine that he'd be projected to do much worse. But right now, his ADP is 95, just barely inside the top 100, and ATC has him at 51. So let's continue that discussion. What do you expect from Jd Martinez? Because he is getting a little long in the tooth here, too.
Yeah. Just he was not so good last year, obviously. But even in his awful year, he hit 7 home runs, which is a pace of 19. I mean, if you bought Jd Martinez for 30 home runs and he turns out with 20, it's not a great buy, but it's not a disaster buy. I think that people are expecting a total disaster. That's what they're doing. Well, he's older and maybe he'll hit the wall. He was terrible last year. That'll continue. It doesn't stop Nelson Cruz, right? Of course, Nelson Cruz is a enigma, and he's just a superstar of himself. But I think there's still more to like in Jd Martinez. He's still going to hit high in the lineup. He's last year he had an unlucky homer to fly ball rate. Now, is that skill or is that not? I'm betting that maybe it's a little bit of downplay, but I think he can bounce back a little bit. His BABIP was 259. That for sure is unlucky. Yes, his StatCast metrics are down, so it's a declining profile, but not everything. His strikeout rate was normal. His walk rate was above his career norms. It's a guy that you should be projecting for a bounce back from his terrible year, age, curve, decline, that kind of thing. And if you do that, I believe that he is undervalued. I think that if you're getting him, where's he going? The eighth round or so, seventh, eighth round. That's pretty good. I mean, this is somebody who just last year was taken in the second round, and I that upside to me is still there. I think that you're getting a good price, and I don't think he's going to go to zero. So, will he return seventh, eighth round value? Maybe not. Maybe he'll return 10th round value, but I'm going to take that chance because he might be worth second round value, and it's all within the possibility. And ATC has the average of somewhere in the middle, but towards the higher side. So I'm going to rely on that.
Yeah, and it's boring to say, but I think we're probably going to see somewhere in between, 2019 and 2020, as
Yeah.
far as the slash line. And yeah, not going to be a 40 homer guy anymore. I think those days are over, but still, I think he's pretty safe at that
So
ADP.
the question though with Martinez is like, what does he have to do to make his money in the eighth round, right? If he hits you 27 homers and hits 270 and knocks in 80 and drives in 80, he makes his value. So he doesn't have to do much. He doesn't have to do everything he did before to earn a profit. It's a high probability of a profit if at this level is what I'm saying.
Right. And then that's exactly it. Just looking for a return on your investment, basically. And so if he
Right.
can do that, nobody's expecting JD Martinez of old. So, um, the only thing I think you really have to worry about at this point is, was it just going to be a continuation? Is it, the curse of Mookie now, that used to be the Bambino, and now with Mookie Betts being traded, is that just cursing the Red Sox forever for the next 100 years? That's possible. But we'll see.
Ooh, Mookie curse. Oof,
Yeah, it's a new one.
not bad. What does the dog say? Is the dog gonna bark? Let's see. Does he agree? No.
Busy eating a chicken leg. No, not a
Oh,
real chicken leg, a fake one. Anyways, all right.
okay.
Mike Yastrzemski, Yaz. He's been talked about. Nick, not with us today, but Nick is a big fan. Gonna try to have as many shares of Yaz as possible. It's not a huge discrepancy here, but 100 versus 134. Do you feel like he can continue the gains he made? The Giants are made kind of minor moves here and there. This still isn't a great lineup. That's the thing. I don't know if we can offer much support. It's not a great hitter's environment. So there's nothing that says that he's going to necessarily take a step forward. He's kind of a pleasant surprise, but how do you feel that he's going to do? You feel like this is a good value, because then if you look at it, he's projected to basically produce as well as Jd Martinez is being drafted, if you think of it that way.
Yeah. I think I love Mike Yastrzemski. I think he's great. He had 21 homers in only 370 at bats in 19. He had a pace of 27 homers last year. So ATC projection of 25 homers seems right to me. And he'll have a handful of steals. Should bat pretty decent lineup spot. So I expect the run production to be great. Batting average is meh, but he'll compile. He, to me, is the exact same profile as Eric Hosmer. Eric Hosmer is going in the 10th round, same profile where he's getting the run production. You'll get, 25 homers, just, get you in there. It's a good value for the 10th round. To me, that is a hot spot where you have two very similarly priced players, very similar profile. Maybe somebody loves Hosmer and will take him in the 9th, and maybe you'll be able to get Yaz in the 11th, right? The more people that have similar profiles that you can identify in the same round is a bigger, what I call hotspot. There's a higher probability that you're going to get one of those because, somebody will be available over there. Who's also in that hotspot? How about Josh Bell? Josh Bell, what's Josh Bell going to do? Pretty much the same type of production. Maybe he'll have a little bit more homers, a little bit worse batting. Actually, he can have a decent batting average too. You're going to get very similar production, the 90 RBIs. Josh Bell is in that hotspot, and Josh Bell's even better value. He's going around later. I really like that hotspot. You know who's also in that hotspot? How about Franmil Reyes? What's Franmil Reyes going to do? Probably a little bit more power than that, but similar average. No steals from Franmil Reyes, okay, but a little bit better average, maybe more homers. These are four guys that are right in the same range between the 10th and 11th round that you can just literally pencil in and say, I'm going to get Hosmer, Yastrzemski, Josh Bell, Franmil Reyes. Who cares? Just take whoever is still left in the 11th, 12th round. It's a value according to ATC, and you don't have to worry. Just don't say I really like this guy. They're all similarly priced. They're all similar profiles. Who knows who'll be better? But I know that one of them will. Maybe some of them will be picked higher, but some of them will be left in the 12th round for you. So just be aware of that. That's how I would approach Yastrzemski. But him personally, I love him. There's nothing that he's been doing wrong, and I don't see growth. But he doesn't have to have growth to earn his value.
Yeah, no, and I'm glad you mentioned those players, especially with Reyes. I actually tweeted this out the other day. Looking at the ATC projections, you're kind of looking for those things that stand out. Uh, Reyes's numbers projected to be almost identical all across the board to a guy going in fifth, sixth round, Luke Voit. Now, I get the difference is that Voit obviously at first base as opposed to Reyes, you got to stick in your DH spot, your utility spot. But that's the same reason why Nelson Cruz is always massively undervalued because people, I don't want to, to clog up my utility spot with a guy who's going to hit, 40 something home runs and bat 300, Well, Reyes, okay, he's not going to bat 300, but still, look at the power output and the fact that you can get him several rounds later, to me, that it's almost a no-brainer. If he's there, you take him, and I reach a round or two sooner. But and then Bell, I love Bell. I don't understand why people are just completely writing him off after last year. He's out of Pittsburgh. That's the problem. Look, he had 0 RBI opportunities, run scoring, all of that. The problems are solved as in terms of that. This is a guy who, again, a top prospect. He's shown what he can do in the bigs. And he was heating up toward the very end of the year. I think that's a guy who might have turned things around had we had a longer season because there were signs and the StatCast numbers are still pretty favorable in terms of his exit velocity.
Yeah.
So I don't get why everyone's hating on Bell so quickly.
Bell doesn't have to do much to earn a profit. He's going in the 11th round. This is a guy that put up 5th round numbers one year. He is just a guy that he doesn't have to. I love guys who don't have to do much to earn the profit. And like I just said with the hotspot, you're not going to get all these. Somebody will be in your league that loves Bell. Somebody that loves Hosmer. But ADP again is an average draft position. It's a zero-sum game. This fantasy baseball. If somebody is taken higher, somebody else has to be taken lower than their ADP is. And if you can identify the people that fit that mold that are the same, really the same, you'll know that, and they're taken around the same. You'll get somebody even cheaper. You can probably get one of these guys in the 12th round and get an even bigger value than ATC is even projecting here. I mean, Josh Bell, 28 homers, totally doable. 260 average, totally doable. He's hit 255 or better in every season other than last year. And last year is a short season. Anything can happen in last season. Most people say, "Oh, that guy hit 220." What is the difference between a 220 hitter and a 270 hitter, right? 220, you say he's awful. 270, you say, oh, it's pretty good. If you do the math, one hit in 20 at bats is 50 points of batting average. Okay. If how many at bats you get a week? 20 at bats a week. So if you have one more hit a week, you would be going from a terrible player to a good player. I mean, think about it in the short season. There was only 10 weeks in the season. We're talking about 10 extra hits, one more hit a week for 2 months. I mean, you can get unlucky. Batting averages are such in flux and are so less predictable that it really is hard. It's hard to buy into any of these short seasons. Just remember the math on that. 1 out of 20 hits is a 50-point jump in batting average. That's all it is.
Yeah, and that especially goes for like guy like Bell, guys who got off to really slow starts, and that's what tanked their average. And Bell, someone had a bad, was it August? I guess begin the season. I mean, what do you expect? Summer training, spring training 2.0, whatever you call it, and then all the delays and all the. I mean, I'm not going to be the guy who's going to say just throw 2020 completely out the window because you can't do that, right? This is our most recent sample, and there are some things that are definitely relevant, but yeah, for a guy like him, where we've seen what he can do before, I don't get how people are overvaluing it so much.
Yeah, and he had 8 homers. I mean, that's a pace of 22 homers for a year. So he was 5-6 off of what we're projecting him now. I mean, he's still going to earn that. He's still going to earn a decent amount, even if what's the worst thing that can happen? You pick him up in the 12th round, he gives you 14th round value. Like, I don't see the downside with Josh Bell. He's not going broke here.
And playing time not in question. I mean, he's the guy. So it's not a platoon situation or anything.
Yeah, well, it wasn't in question in Pittsburgh.
Well, that's true, but I'm saying that's also not a concern.
Yeah, right. Correct.
Now, playing time is a concern for this next group, and one guy who's projected by many to break out, and now not sure where he's going to slot in, is Rowdy Tellez in Toronto, but also one of ATC's most undervalued guys is Randall Grichuk. And he is kind of I would say an afterthought, but going 180 on average. ATC has him at 95 overall. That's a huge gap. But is he now with Springer and Semien and all his moves? Is he going to get squeezed out of at bats right now? Roster resource, which isn't the end all be all, of course, but has him on the bench. Has Tellez at DH, but we don't know if they're going to split time, how that's going to work out. So, if you had to take a guess, how you see that playing out, but also, are you still a believer in Grichuk because of the skills?
That's a good question. You're probably going to notice an ATC difference. I haven't seen it yet. What's going to come out this weekend for him? Possible with the addition of Springer and Semien and whatnot, then you'll see him lose at bats and you'll see his value go down. So I expect the big bargain that ATC shows right now will diminish somewhat. Yeah, he was a $23 roto player last year. What more does he have to do to prove his worth? I mean, I was all over him the last 2 years in a row. He is such a bargain at this level. He doesn't have to do much. I love these guys who are huge bargains. He doesn't have to do much to do anything. But yeah, the playing time does worry me. I would probably take the under. Not probably. I am taking the under on what ATC projects. The numbers for is it Grichuk or is it Grichuk?
You say Grichuk, I say Grichuk. We'll just call it off.
All right. You're not a Canadian, are you? Right?
I'm not Canadian. No, I'm from Miami, Florida, actually.
well, Grichuk is not Canadian anyway, so I guess you need somebody. Anyways, he's projected for 31 homers. Now he hit a pace of 32 homers last year. The year before he hit 31 homers. The year before that he hit 25 homers, but only on 400 at bats, which is a pace of over 30 homers. He's a 30 homer guy, right? He's just year after year. The batting average, what is ATC projecting? 250? It's nothing. The big value that ATC is showing is the runs and RBIs. About 80 runs and 85 RBIs. That is a question of where he bats in the lineup, and that's probably gonna decrease very much when we see the new projections come out for him. So I think that his value is probably going to be lower than ATC because of that. I still think he's going to be a bargain. Like when it's all said and done, I still think he's even in part-time play going to be able to hit 70 RBIs and score 65 runs, something like that, which will make him a bargain for his spot, but not a be-all end-all I have to buy. That's my opinion of him. Tellez, also good guys. They've got a lot of good guys out in Toronto. It's a pretty stacked team, and they've got resources available to go. Even the bench players are good. I'm excited for Toronto. It sounds like a fun time to be had. The question for them though is who's pitching for them? Who's in the rotation? The best they could do is trade for Steven Matz. Like what are they waiting for? Are they going to sign Bauer? Is that what we're dealing with here?
I don't see that happening. Minor details. He needs to pitch when you can just outslug everybody, right?
I guess that's what they're doing, right?
I, I don't know. I don't know. You think they'll? I don't know. I don't see them making a move for Bauer. I think they're gonna kind of uh kind of scrape by with some veterans and their combination. Their hope that Pearson, takes a massive leap. But I don't know. I don't see them as a
Yeah.
big power
Oh,
player in
hold
the
on a
free agent
second. I'm
market.
getting a phone call.
Oh,
Hello? Oh, it's the Toronto organization. You need a starting pitcher? Oh, I'm available. Okay,
oh.
that was the Blue Jays. They're looking for a starting pitcher here.
Well, there you go. I mean, you are out there in the softball field every week. So I mean, you probably got the arm for it. Hey, compared to Steven Matz, you could probably do just fine.
Nah.
Oh, of course.
But yeah, really, I mean, who's pitch? Tanner Roark. That's who they're counting on. I mean,
Yeah.
it's weird. It's weird. The Mets look. That's the Mets from last year. Great offense and no starting pitching. It's not a recipe for a good season. I think they do need to make that one push for another arm. And maybe they will. Maybe they're going to sign like a Jake Odorizzi, who I hope the Mets sign. That would give them shoring up of somewhere in the middle. You don't have to get an ace. They just need some quality innings to handle things.
Yeah, don't get greedy. I think the Mets have done their damage already. They're good enough. Let's not get greedy and keep asking for things, right?
Says the Marlins fan.
Says the Marlins fan. Yeah. What you know what? Let's
Thanks for
trade you one of our
Yamamoto,
top
by the way.
prospects. We'll give you.
Thank you for Yamamoto.
Yeah. Oh well. We'll see how that pans out. You can have him. But the Marlins will probably wind up giving Sixto and Trevor Rogers for a minor league prospect. Anyways.
Jesus.
All right. Let's enough Marlin talk. Okay, let's finish with the Twins. Now, here's interesting. Talk about a team that could have a stacked lineup. So Max Kepler, Miguel Sano, Jorge Polanco, and Luis Arias, all of those players have a gap of 60 or more in ADP versus their ATC projections. So I guess the question is, why do people not trust Twins hitters, or why does ATC love Minnesota so much?
Yeah, I've noticed that too. I remember when ATC used to love people on the Braves when they had the Upton twins on there. The ATC loved it. It's great. I like how the Twins are going for these batting average guys. I mean, they signed Andrelton Simmons, who has an amazing contact rate. How about Luis Arias? ATC projects him with the highest batting average in all of baseball. I had Randy Dobnak recently on my podcast, on the Beat the Shift podcast, and I asked him, "Hey, who's the best hitter on the Twins?" Well, I mean, Nelson Cruz is a monster, of course, but it's like Luis Arias. That kid can hit. It's the way that he said it. I think that the Twins have this mentality of contact is really important. And that's probably why they got rid of Eddie Rosario, because they really are more interested in the contact. Alex Krylov, he could be he's going to be a great player because he has a very very high floor. He's going to put the ball on the get the barrel and hit the ball. I think that they're loaded here. Jorge Polanco, where is he starting right now? Maybe he's going to start a second, and Arias will rotate. Maybe he's just going to fill in and they'll shuffle a little bit. They've got a lot of options. They're doing like what the Blue Jays did in even their bench players are above average guys. I don't know why. I can't tell you why the ATC loves the Twins, but it does. I think that there's just a lot of good to like, especially on a fantasy basis. The run production is incredible there. Right? They're going to score a lot of runs, and I think that we've had this discussion also recently, even that people do not value runs and RBIs in leagues, especially late, especially in the medium to late in the 10th to 15th rounds of drafts. People just are not looking for it. They're like, well, let me fill in some power. Let's get a 25 homer guy. Let's fill in some stolen bases, get a 15 stolen base guy. And they're missing the play of, no, get the run production guys. That's 40% of your categories. I think people miss out on that. And I don't know whether it's a psychological thing why they do it, but they're certainly not trusting the numbers when the numbers tell them to do that. And these Twins just get runs home. Whether they hit 2,500, it doesn't really matter what they do. They're getting on base. And when you're on base, you're going to score runs and you're going to hit runs. So I like the fact that the Twins are going to this contact approach and getting runners on base, and they're more fans of that. I think that that's going to play into their run production, and that's going to keep all these Twins values high. And I agree with ATC's love of them, not because they're twins or anything, but because they are getting the job done and unknowingly doing it.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, Cruz resigning, that it's got to give you more confidence in the runs scored
Yeah.
and all that. And with Kepler, that's exactly it. Not a high average guy. And yeah, he'll hit 20 something, maybe close to 30 home runs, but nothing that's going to be a league winner for you. It's the runs. And that's the thing. He's probably going to lead off again. He walks a ton, gets on base, and look at all the players
Yeah.
behind him drive him in. So that's exactly the thing is you don't think of, oh, Max Kepler, he's going to, be a top 20 run scored guy. That doesn't
Yeah.
come across anybody's mind, but that's what makes him so valuable plus the power. You know what I mean?
You know who doesn't fit in that lineup? It's Byron Buxton. He doesn't fit anything there. I kind of think that if people are high on him, I kind of think that he, they're going to marginalize him in Minnesota. He does not fit their plan. He's gone the power route because maybe he thinks that's his only path to value on Minnesota. So he's sold out for power even more. I don't know. The Twins are The Twins are being more analytical. They're stopping stealing, which hurts Buxton. They're going for the contact. I think they're a very analytical team, and it's showing. Anytime you see a team do something interesting where they're getting a certain type of player. I remember, like, I think it was Ian Osiris who said, like, the Rays in the playoffs, they've gotten pitchers with ridiculous arm angles, the farthest left arm angle, the farthest right. These analytic people, they're doing these things, and the Twins are doing it too. The Twins, I think, just signed Alex Colomé today. You're going to see something like the Rays bullpen. You're going to see him close games. You're going to see Rogers close games. You're going to see Hansel Robles close games. I think you're going to see the very analytical mind. You're going to see openers. You're going to see openers in the Twins. Mark my words on that. Um, you're going to see these analytical things, and that's why they're coming up on ATC, because ATC is an analytical system. So I think it all goes hand in hand with the philosophy of the organization, and I think they're doing great things.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be successful. The question is, does it translate to fantasy? Um,
The
because
dog.
that,
The
see,
dog's
a big
barking.
fan, a big
He
fan.
agrees. He agrees.
Do you agree?
Every time he agrees. See,
All right.
that is what the dog barking. Now I know I'm right. See,
But
it's
that's it.
it's given.
As far as the Twins, yeah, that's the thing. Is the only thing I have to worry about is it's going to translate to success in reality. Is it going to translate to success in fantasy? With Arias, yeah, he could maybe even lead the league in batting. There's no power and there's no speed there, and so that's the thing that kind of marginalizes him, to some
Yeah,
extent.
for fantasy.
Yeah, in fantasy.
Right.
Plus the playing time is in question. But that's true about Buxton because if he's sitting at the bottom
Yeah.
of the lineup, that hurts him too. If he doesn't get the green light to run, well, then yeah, I mean, there's a lot less interest there. But
Right.
that ship has sailed for me 3 years, 4 years ago. So I'm not worried about Buxton.
Yeah. Byron Buxton, how many stolen bases did he have last year? Do you know?
Uh, 11.
Two.
Oh, I was
Just
close.
he's not running. The
Not really.
Twins have shut him down. Maybe he was injured or whatever, but they're making a concerted effort tonight. And by the way, how about Eddie Rosario, who left the Twins? He used to steal bases. Look for Rosario to increase his roto value. by stealing a little bit. He's going to have more steals than he ever did before, or at least in the last couple of years. Look for him to run. Rosario's an even better value off the Twins. That's my advice to you all.
I would say I was waiting. It got two, not one, but two chances to mention it to Rosario, and there you go. So leaving the Twins to go to the Indians, who would have thought, helping his value. All right, so there you go. Now
right.
I'm a fan of Rosario too. I think he's well, he's still gonna be underrated, also undervalued. But we'll see what the new projection. So to lead us out here, you say this coming weekend, the adjustments are gonna make. How does that work? How far do you tweak, and how much? Is it just mainly based on playing time and some of these signings, or is there anything else that goes into it?
Oh, I don't tweak anything here. It's just the fact that you've had some signings over the last couple of days. Closers, that's going to change the makeup of bullpen, so saves might be a little bit all over the place. Probably not going to be fully correct either, but it'll be going there. Yeah, signings, lineup positions, right? When projections are running their RBIs and runs, it's usually a model. He's going to bat third, bat fifth, in a certain run environment. So it's going to change and adjust just like that. So that's what you'll see mostly with the ATC going. The only thing I'm going to do is if something looks really out of place, I'll put something there. If I know that maybe the projections did not get something right yet, maybe the Arenado trade is not in totally. I don't know, something like that. I don't think I'm going to do anything yet because I'll have another adjustment in 5 days from now, and by then it'll be in there. As we get to March, I'll adjust that actually faster because people are doing drafts, boom, 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 boom. But yeah, that's the thing about ATC. There's always a lag. There's an informational lag. At first, it's going the underlying projections. Then I got to load it up and do it. So it's a week process for anything that happens in here. Unfortunate, but hey, I mean, ATC has been good. So can't complain too much other than a weak timing.
All right, that sounds good. And you know what? At least baseball is just actually going to be back. As far as we know, unless things change again. What, 2 weeks? We're 2 weeks away from spring training. It feels pretty good to say that.
Wow, really? Wow, that's incredible.
Spring doesn't feel like spring is in the air, especially I'm sure where you are. But you know what? It's coming. It's coming. All right. Well, Ariel, once again, thanks for coming on. Talking about hitters, of course, ATC projections are on Fangraphs and a place called RotoBaller. You can check them out now. And then talk about also Beat the Shift coming back with Ruven. You want to tell us when and where we can find that?
Yeah, so the Beat the Shift podcast, which is new on Fangraphs, we've been doing it on a different platform from TGFBI, Justin Mason's platform, but we're now out on Fangraphs, so more accessibility. You can go and check on the site. You can follow our podcast on Twitter at beat_shift_pod. We put a pod out weekly. Generally, we sometimes throw extra episodes when we have a nice interview. But yeah, we do it usually Thursday nights, so it hits overnight on Friday. So it's good end of the week listening for you. During the preseason, we go through ATC players that are undervalued, just like we did today, and we do deep dives and say, do we agree with that? Do we not agree with that? So you'll get more of that, and we talk a lot about strategy in terms of how to win. Do you need to how do you work fab? Do you need to risk manage? Is shortstop, can you wait? All the interesting things that you wouldn't think of. We talk about it, and we do that all throughout the season. Plus, during the season, we'll also shoot a waiver wire where players that we think you might consider picking up for that Fab Sunday, pitcher preview of maybe a pitcher who has a good matchup to stream on the wire, things like that. And of course, player analysis as it comes up. So a lot of good information. Check that out also. You won't be disappointed.
Absolutely not. One of the best podcasts out there. I don't just mean for
Thank
fantasy
you.
baseball. I just mean in general. But
Oh,
yeah,
thank
hey, I'm ready, man. TGFBI also going to kick off pretty soon.
you.
I
Yeah.
don't know. It's going to be weird and with like to defend the title, but I'm excited. Definitely, Fab is the hardest part. I will tell you that making those decisions
You did okay last
each
year.
week. Yeah, you did. We
You
had
did good.
Rotoball representing pretty strong. Baseball in the air. So of course we'll be here all preseason, draft season long to cover ATC projections, talk about ADP, some sleepers, some busts, everything that you crave. All right, so keep tuned here. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already for some weird reason, and we'll see you again next time. Thanks for watching.